Transition, the process of change from one condition to another.
We are now at a new crossroad where change is evident once again.
What does not serve us must transform us anew.
Returning to our original state of oneness and true nature of that which created who we truly are.
Confusion was the way of the past. Enlightenment is the way of the now and future, shedding away the layers of deceit.
We now bring you the transformation of the two who started as one. Our fearless planet never stands still.
Earth has been in a process of transition, and we are not exempt from this remarkable ongoing reality.
Well, good evening. Happy Saturday to all. You all are doing great.
Oh, I'm so full. Oh my gosh.
I know.
We just had like a ton of
Food. Hey, dude, called Rowan. How are you?
didn't we?
Yeah, we went to Golden Corral and
had our fill.
yeah,
I had an early
birthday
celebration for myself, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
Probably put on a couple pounds.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
But tomorrow back to the gym. So what does dude call?
Doing good.
Doing good. That's awesome. That's awesome. It's always good to do good, right? So we have some more lovely information to bring you guys today. It seems that we're stuck in some sort of, we as in the planet and what's taking place with I think it's the Mandela effect or something that's going on, because I remember at one point in time that those of us who identified as transgender, those of us with a transgender, transsexual history, were pretty much settled on who we are. You know, we transitioned, we lived a life based on the sex that we identify as, and everything was hunky-dory. Fast forward, now it seems that a lot of transgender folks are okay with being
somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between. And not that there's anything wrong with that, okay? Because we are all entitled to express, identify as we wish. We're not here to tell anybody who they think they are or who they should be. But these individuals, they do want to tell us that we're delusional and create this whole drama around biology. And we aim to prove that biology is not exactly as we think it is.
Well, things aren't as cut and dry as one would. Well, Biology 101 class is old news.
Yeah.
So you need to kind of throw away the old textbook that you got in 8th grade and kind of start looking at what people are finding out now, you know, because what the findings are now is much different than the black and white, you know, I mean, things that they were saying back then. They were so absolute, you know, I mean, they taught things in a way that was like, oh, and this happened and this is why. And we know now that the truth of what happened during, you know, the Holocaust is different, and what happened during Civil War was different. What happened during the Civil War was the Revolutionary War was different. Columbus, it was all different, right? But
discoveries.
We found out more information. And as we do develop and grow and mature and are able to really open up our minds to understand things, it's amazing what happens, because we get these transformational, you know, realizations that things aren't as we thought they were.
Well, of course, everything changes. That's part of evolution. That's part of growth. Nothing stays stagnant. I mean, this world that we live in, you know, it's like, it's the way it goes. But there are people that just can't change with the times. It's like big oil. They don't want to give up their power. There are tons of inventions out there for much more efficient ways of running a car and living life. but they don't want to let go of the power. There's somebody, it could be maybe religion, it could be status quo, it could be just mankind just being stubborn, that do not want to let go of the old paradigm.
And I know that people want to call us crazy for trying to present information that defies the biological normative story that's being told. It doesn't surprise me, because it seems like the old Stoic narrative has been installed and in place for such a long time.
Yep.
And it's served its purpose well for the planet in keeping us contained and and sequestered and organized into these nice little male-female camps and stuff, where the weaker sex has been said to be the female, and
right, exactly.
the stronger sex is supposed to be
and
the
that
male.
genes aren't changeable, and
yeah.
we know that that's false. I mean, Bruce, what's his name?
Lipton
has proven that it's not.
Epigenetics. The study of epigenetics is the study of the fact that genes don't really control the body.
Exactly.
That the blueprint for the genes is up to you. How you print out your own blueprint is in a way how you intend to create yourself.
Exactly. So before we get into all the nitty gritty, of course, we're gonna give you some
juicy tidbits
of.
It seems like all of our
hating.
haters are still
Yeah.
busy at work. And this morning I woke up and I basically kind of flung through Twitter and noticed that the person that's been, at odds with us for a while now, that we were on his show and stuff like that.
Right.
He decided to be a child today and play a little junior.
I don't think it's just today. I think that's
but today
was
with this picture that he put up of the two of us.
Oh, and by the way, he changed his name now to Lethal Mars because of what you.
Because I called him Lethal, and then somebody called him out on it and said, "Why are you giving those two so much attention? And why are you adopting their name that they called you?" And he's like, "Well, I just like it." He just loves the drama.
He thinks he's made an impression on us because we can't keep talking about him. It's not so much about you, but it's about the message that you are bringing. And he does admit that he's socially awkward and is inappropriate. He has an inappropriate sense of humor, and he just, that's who he is. He says, well, when you do stuff like that, it's not really cool. And then again, another one, it's just nonstop.
It's like a game for him. He has this sick sense of humor that I guess he likes to put on display and stuff.
Yeah. So in that note, then it continues. Let me find it here. So he starts saying that it wasn't the best episode, but and I don't blame anyone that wants to skip this, but he turned around and said he invited us to his show so we could iron out our differences. And again, the differences was that I just did not agree with the way he was demeaning and calling individuals in the trans community delusional and constantly making fun and wanting to take away, what's that, that
HB
bill
1057 in South Dakota is a bill that basically is an attempt to restrict transgender therapy for young trans kids under 16.
Exactly.
So he specifically went on our show and stated that he wouldn't want his daughter to get anything.
Right.
And
by the way, we've removed all the we've requested for him to bring down that video. We're not giving him permission. We didn't sign anything so that he stops making fun of the appearance. And we've removed all the videos that the interview that I did with, or that we did with him, and then
The one earlier that that he did with
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
You were requesting
Exactly.
to
So
have it
I
taken
do not give him permission. So he's been reported to YouTube, and those videos better come down and within the 48 hours that YouTube provides before they actually knock the video down themselves. So I wanted to share. Did I keep this open here? Earlier, I had reached out to many of the people that I felt that I hurt with my behavior. Jeanette was one of those individuals because of the things that I said about Jazz, and Buck Angel is another individual that I felt that I owed an apology to. So I reached out to him. I said, Buck, I wanted to personally apologize to you for my behavior towards you. The past few years, I was dealing with a lot of PTSD and things from the past I thought I had a handle on. There's no excuse for my behavior, but all I can do is apologize and move forward. Hope all is well with you. He writes me back, right on, my friend. Thank you. I very much appreciate that. I feel compassion for you. Hope you're taking care of yourself. Always here if you need me. Little heart, Trampa. And I said, thank you for accepting my apology. It means a lot. I'm doing better, thank you, and healing. I broke ties with toxic family members and worked through childhood molestation. Once again, thank you for your friendship and for your forgiveness. He writes back, right on, my friend. Happy to hear that. Just keep focusing on yourself and your wellness. We all do stuff, including me. Most important is we acknowledge and come through it as a lesson, and I see you have heart. So as we were looking, this was an Instagram, right? We find that Buck Angel interacts, I wish I could make this up, interacts with Transbra and says, try to have compassion, but he talks so much insanity. All I can say is mental illness at its finest. Seems more and more trannies are losing their, their SHIT.
That wasn't the first comment, though. The very first one was
That was something
more
else.
inflammatory.
Okay, but I'm going to share them all. First of all, here's a transgender man who is calling transgender people with a derogative name that many people don't like having used, and then he is publicly insulting me by saying that I have a mental illness at its finest. That's liable. You are completely out of line there, Buck. And you guys read what he said. So it's like, well, these people say one thing in front of me, and they say another thing behind my back. And so go ahead and read, but I guess if it's even imperative, oops.
That's why my focus remains on letting other people share their stories and voice their opinions, because it's important when the community is so toxic. Also, working together with D-Trans to build a better healthcare system for both trans and D-Trans. Please check out gccan.org. That was the last thing that they said.
Okay, so this was the first. Okay, not the best. Well, I just finished reading that.
But after that,
and after that, it was this.
No, it wasn't that's no, it wasn't that.
Okay, well,
it was different.
Okay, well, that's all we have there.
No, it is this one.
Okay, that guy is insane. Seriously, he attacked the heck.
Is it showing?
It should. Yeah. Yeah. But
okay. It's that one.
Yeah.
That's the inflammatory one, the first one.
And then detransition and blah, blah, blah. And again, I apologize. I read the actual interaction that we had for him to put this out there, and the email that was sent to him was sent on
not too long ago.
Let's see what it tells you here.
It was way back on
January 23rd.
Yeah, just last week or so.
Last week or so.
But see here, he's saying Buck Angel, Transpaw, the one that, is so famous for being like the grandfather of all trans men.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks he knows anything. He needs to be shut down, is what Buck Angel tells Transbra. And he is a very mentally ill person, which is something that people seem to like to throw around the word mentally ill.
And that's against the law. That is inflammatory. That is libel. That is just, especially public, on a public forum with a public figure. And after we've had an interaction, and after he's like, oh no, it's cool, man. I forgive you. I have compassion. I understand. So this is the kind of community that we're dealing with, you know. I'm not going to badmouth Buck Angel. And I'm not going to badmouth anyone. I just want people to understand what is going on here. A lot of these people are all about what they're going to get out of the situation. Mars thinks that he's doing something brand new by showing the different voices. You know, back in 2012, Transition Radio started, and that's what I did. I brought individuals from all over the world. You guys could go back, way back into 2012, and you see all the different interviews from trans people from all over the world. There's also a section for detransitioners that we started interviewing back then as well. So it's like this competition, this constantly thing that goes on, which, and then mudslinging the way that is being done, which I find.
I mean, I'm not shocked that Buck Angel did it, but I am shocked that Buck Angel did it, because it's like, Buck Angel, really? I mean, a person that was your friend, who you spoke to on several occasions and had some really great conversations.
We were friends. We were really good friends. He even invited me over when he was still married to Mexico. Me and my ex-wife Violet. When you guys ever want to come over, you're more than welcome, so forth and so on. You could attack an idea. And that is what we've been trying to do. Attack the idea of what Mars is doing. Okay, you don't attack and call somebody mentally ill, try to shut somebody down for speaking if they don't agree with you. That's taking away your freedom of speech. And last I checked, we're still in the United States of America for now.
And he thinks that I went and personally attacked him about his family. I basically only stated what I said in conversation with him in the past, which is, if you transitioned and you were on our show and you said that you did deal with it and that you went and talked to your family members, because it is so like hard, and I understand, and it may take years for people to do this, but it is something that people should do, because it's a part of the journey. It's a part of the of making the steps to transition. It's a part of it.
Well, it's part of what we were getting at. Was part of the reason that they are so bent on biology is because they're still dealing with their own biology. Once you've dealt with that issue, and yes, no one's saying that we don't know our biology. That is clear as day. But how much do you really know biology? And we aim to prove today, as we did yesterday with some more articles, that biology is not as black and white as it seems. But if you can't face your own family and you're ashamed of what you've done, then there's something deeper going on inside. And that is basically what we were trying to do. We weren't talking bad about his family. We weren't talking. It was basically, have you gone home and dealt with the issue? Because when he interviewed me in the first interview that we did, we were talking about my family. And then I asked him, how is your relationship with your family? You know, because he asked me, do you have any questions for me? And he goes, well, I haven't really talked to my family about it. That was kind of like I had to send him a video.
No, he didn't say that even then.
No, later on that he said that.
Yeah.
So, you know, just as a matter of fact, you know, it's like, hey, you really need, because that is very important. If there is a miscommunication between family and there's this animosity and non-acceptance, it's really hard on the person. So he's taken this and really has run with it and tried to make it something that is not. And when he pointed all that biology stuff, and I said, hey, look, if you want to be a trans guy and you want to deal with your biology, that's on you. I'm a man. If you're not a man, you know, then that's, if you don't want to,
you're not at the stage where
that's cool.
That,
you know, But again, he's taking it but he's calling me an a-hole, that I'm awful. I've never called him any particular name. I attack his ideas, I attack what he's doing, but I'm not attacking your person. So this is the kind of childish behavior that we deal with. And these people are just, I think that's it.
No, there was more.
There was more?
Yeah. Was it here or there?
I just did that, man. This guy is insane. Seriously, he attacked the heck out of me.
There was another one.
This one?
Yeah. Was it? Yeah. No. No.
No.
It was there was more. It's on my
this is all I have right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess it didn't transfer.
No. So anyway, my point with all of this is to try to explain that I don't know about any one of you watching, but if I'm going to tell you something, I'm going to tell it to you in your face. That's always been my problem, that I'm too honest, too verbal, too expressing everything, detransition, transition, getting mad at the community, doing whatever. And it's there. It's real. It's raw. I don't talk behind people's back. I don't tell people one thing on an email and then turn around to backstab you. That to me is just, that's not manly behavior. I'm sorry, but it's not. I mean, there's certain things that men do. They have the handshake. There's certain, I don't know, just call me old fashioned.
And you've reached out to Buck Angel, and there's been no response, so
Yeah.
He's aware of what he's doing and everything.
Of course. I mean, I emailed him right away. So now you're talking bad about me behind, and I shared some of the JPEGs of the things that Mars have said, which is what got us into that Twitter war in the first place. Now, very, very.
He also said this.
He said
earlier, yesterday, he said, there is some sick fulfillment in deleting a very lengthy YouTube comment written by delusional people. They just keep them coming back, though. LOL. This is too much fun.
Okay, let me see here.
He gets this sick pleasure in allowing people to write derogatory things about us on his thread for the video that we were in, that we have requested him to take down because he has no permission to use our image or likeness or voice. But he calls us delusional and says that we are the ones that just keep coming back because, we just are so obsessed with him. And it's Mars. It's not that we're obsessed with you. It's that you provide a space for haters to fuel themselves with all that hatred that they have towards us. We've garnered a lot of haters.
Yes, because of and Darcy's here, and just let me see who do we have on the chat room and welcome them. And Tacos Forever. I love that name, Tacos Forever. And let's see, before we go on and continue, I had to watch your interview with Mars the other day, and you had nothing but respect and kindness. You did not attack him, but he attacked you and shut you down when you were in defense. Yeah, but that's the kind of person. It's like I find that, and I've been in this community since 2003. There's a lot of backstabbing. There's a lot of lies. There's a lot of envy, and I've experienced that throughout. And it's really disheartening. It really is. That's pretty much, because I'm going to tell you something in your face. I will. Like I had my words with Buck Angel a while back, in his face, not behind his back. Because I don't do that. I don't talk behind people behind their backs. It's not cool. I'm not gonna do things of that nature. And especially call people mentally ill. I mean, that's against the law. You're not allowed to diagnose someone. You're not allowed to call somebody or defame somebody that way. Now, what's taking place here, folks, with this Lethal Marts, bruh, whatever it is, tweets that I showed you some the other day, and I'm going to continue to show you something. This is very disturbing. Okay. Reason I call it disturbing is because, let me see here. Okay, add this. All right. I don't know if many of you heard there was a transgender female who got really beat up badly. And we're going to share that story with you. But before we share that story with you, can you go ahead and read what Lethal Mars, and
Right.
the name really fits him right
It does
now.
right now.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing. And I told him
Yeah.
that he was being lethal to the trans community. And this is what I mean, you know. And so, yeah, Mars, it really does fit you. When you still appear to be male and enter female spaces, do not expect to be welcomed with open arms.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, here we have a picture of a transgender female who got brutally beat up. And let me see if that is sharing. Is it not? No, I need to.
You need to stop
Open.
sharing the other one.
Yeah.
Share the other page.
Let me share the other page. Yeah, I got it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this is pretty graphic, and yeah. So there was a man who beat up a transgender woman for using the women's restroom. He was found guilty of a hate crime. Fred Constanza was convicted in an Oregon court for the first-degree bias crime, second-degree assault, and harassment for the August attack of Lauren Jackson, a transgender woman.
Jackson was visiting Agate State Beach Park near Newport, Oregon, on the day of the attack. She stopped to use the women's restroom, and that's when Costanza walked over 100 yards across the park to confront her. Multiple witnesses told Newport police.
Costanza hit Jackson 10 times, not once, not twice, but 10 times, police said. She told them he was holding her hair back to prevent her from escaping.
Newport police found Jackson bleeding from her face with a broken jaw. After Costanza had fled the scene, he was arrested later that day.
Costanza, 37, of Blackfoot, Idaho, entered a non-guilty plea in September. He remained jailed in Lincoln County, Oregon, until this January's trial, the Oregonian reported.
A week after his trial began on January 22nd, a jury found him guilty on 3 accounts. CNN had reached out to Costanza's attorney but hasn't heard back. About the 2 months before Jackson's assault, Oregon lawmakers updated the state's existing hate crime legislation to include gender identity as a protected class.
So according to FBI most recent hate crime data, around 6% of the victims in the 120 hate crimes reported in Oregon in 2018 were targeted because of their gender identity. So the victim had surgery to repair face fracture. This man had so much rage and hatred caused by the intolerance caused by all those individuals, to include individuals in the trans community, that fail to understand that when they bring up certain things that create bigotry in people, this is what happens.
You know, and the thing is that Mars literally gave this man a free pass in beating this trans woman and breaking her face and her jaw. And so much so that she had to have reconstructive surgery. And Mars is on his Twitter account condoning this behavior. And, you know, the person that is also a partner with them in that Trans Bro podcast is saying, well, if they have a beard, then, you know, they should think twice before entering a restroom.
Ladies, how many of you, after a certain age, or even before a certain age, start sprouting some facial hair? PCOS is one of the things that causes women to grow facial hair. So now do you have to worry about going to the bathroom and getting beat up by some crazy maniac because they think you're a man?
no one has the right. Let me reiterate that. Nobody has the right to attack another person just because they're using a bathroom. And mind you, a person that walks across the street 100 yards to confront a homeless trans woman who barely started HRT and started transitioning. I mean, I think one of the things that Mars doesn't realize and his partner doesn't realize is that FTMs really do have it a lot easier than MTFs because the androgen it works both ways. Yeah. It works great in the direction for you guys, and it works terrible for the direction of us because, you know, if that has already set in, for some of us, it's very difficult.
So basically, Mars and those that agree with Mars are forgetting that they started somewhere too. We didn't magically transition and pass quickly. So basically, if you don't pass, you don't have the privileges and you don't get to use restrooms and you don't get the privileges that those of us that can pass easily have. Anyway, after the attack in August, Lauren Jackson told CNN affiliate KATU she spent time in the hospital recovering from fractures in her jaw and a surgery to repair them.
We watched the video shortly after the attack happened and everything, and she was being interviewed, and this person is so peace loving. I mean, if you were to see the interview that was on KATU, you would never have imagined that this person, I mean,
she had no ill feelings for the
she didn't even
attacker.
want to prosecute the person. You mean, she's like, I really hope nothing happens to him. I mean, she had nothing negative to say.
Nothing but kind words.
She started transitioning to female over a year ago. She said she had recently moved to Portland to embrace the life change.
All of a sudden, being pretty is very important to me. She said jokingly to KATU, I'm having a rough start.
So she's even laughing about it.
Right.
Jackson said Costanza approached her, yelling something about her being a woman. She said nothing in response. He blindsided her, she said, repeatedly punching her until someone in the park heard her screams and tackled Costanza, who fled in a car.
Do you have to take away somebody else's right in order to protect someone's right? Is one more important than the other? I don't know. I don't feel safe using the men's restroom, she says, and other people don't feel safe having me in the women's restroom.
Jackson said the incident hasn't stopped her from living as herself or from using the restroom of the gender she identifies with. I believe that people are inherently good and that I live in a kind world, she said. I don't think I did anything wrong, and I don't want to live in fear. I came here searching for community, and I found it.
So, do you understand why I approached Mars on his Twitter account? Because not only did I read one, but two, but more and more demeaning comments towards individuals of the community. And now he's trying to turn this all around on us. And he's trying to make people feel like they're in the wrong because they don't want to deal with the biology issue. We're running away from it because that is what gets us hurt. That is what gets us, all traumatized. We transition to shed away that biology.
But the irony here is that Mars had already retweeted another tweet that was like polar opposite of what they were talking about, because it was a tweet that said, just a little reminder of why it is important to protect LGBT children at school. And it focused on this article in a UK paper that said trans teenager left with boot mark on her head after an attack in school. And so it's like, what do you believe in? Crazy. I mean, I'm also wondering if you literally just don't like trans women, that I remember that Mark had said, next time, we do a show, hey, I want to have Lynna on because she knows a lot about religious
He wanted me to
things.
go back on his show and talk about religion because of what transpired. And I said, well, hey, let's let Lynna come in because
He's
she's
like,
no.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think he really does
I really
have something
do think
against
he has
trans women,
animosity
but
against trans women.
So let's see here. Let's engage some of our chatters.
And
here.
here's another thing that I find interesting. In a post that he wrote back about, just 12 hours ago, or, like yesterday, he let people know that his problem with his gender therapist pushing him to socially transition was that he didn't see the point, because from his perspective, his biological differences didn't change anything. So why would he transition? It's like, and then another person wrote, I agree, I never understood the social transition. I can't understand, somebody else wrote, being pushed. My therapist never would have pressured me. So
well, it's important to do the social transitioning. Yeah, probably. I mean, there's a lot going on there. I'm not going to go as far as to say that he's got mental disorders. There's a lot of stuff going on. I don't particularly think that people that have baggage and have faced traumas have mental conditions. They're just traumas and things that we all have to work through. To like label somebody with a mental condition, that's rude and that's against the law. But to tell somebody, hey, you need to really go in deep, reflect, find out what's going on. Are you doing this for the right reasons? Why are you so bent on hurting the trans community? He doesn't realize that what he's doing is very toxic and very lethal and very hurtful. So let's see here. 10 times Taco Forever. I mean, that's crazy.
And this is the theme that we see when people transition well, and they get on a platform like YouTube and they're able to share and talk and have, their little group of loving people that really like everything they have to say.
Mm-hmm.
It happened when we interviewed Janae Rose. She talked about how Blair White attacked her and told her she was a man when she had just begun doing hormones and stuff. Blair literally had the money to get surgeries, whether she saved for it or whether mommy and daddy paid for it, I don't know. But she had her face done and her breasts done and everything done.
Right.
And she expects to have passing privilege, and those who don't get made fun of. Those who don't are shown on a video and they say, something about, this is the dinosaur that wants to get in your bathroom and stuff. And it's
not cool.
It's like not cool.
It's like, do you guys not remember when you first started how hard it was? So now because you're like on top of the mountain, you're going to throw rocks at the people that are trying to climb up? That's just dead wrong. Anyway, Darcy says she probably wasn't on hormones or has had any treatment. She was probably just beginning. And for Mars to support assault, that is absolutely insane. Exactly. And a lot of people start socially transitioning first because that's part of the prerequisite, or it used to be.
Yeah.
That you had to live as the gender or sex
real
life experience. So that way, if, hey, this is really what is going on, right? But,
yeah, it was our guest that we interviewed last show on Tuesday. Blair called Janae Rose a man.
Yeah.
And she just, it's just wrong. And the irony is, it's like one MTF telling another MTF that they're a man.
Yeah.
I mean, really?
Yeah.
Do you need to go there?
Exactly.
I mean, really.
It's just dead wrong. It creates people to have animosity towards trans people, because if regular people hear this from trans people, then it's like, oh, if it's okay because they're saying it, we could say it too, and we could attack them and we could do whatever we want because of fields, because of biology. It's just wrong. And that is causing a lot of problems and will continue to cause a lot of problems.
And the thing is that I get fed up because things are said about you, and then we write on comments on YouTube on his video, which now
he removes
comments.
because he was like removing everything because people were like attacking us, and we go in there and try to explain because he paints the picture the way he wants to paint it,
Right.
and that's just not right. So that's when I said, okay, you're not going to allow us to write comments on your video. You're going to take that video down. You do not have permission to have our likeness on there. We didn't sign anything. Every time I've ever had a guest, usually in the past, I would have everybody sign a release form because you need a release in case a person changes their mind and they don't want their video being shown because they are stealth now, whatever else. You have that release form signature that, kind of like protects you. But if you don't have a release form, and you're not granting a person permission to show their image, you must take that video down. So he's got 48 hours is what YouTube has given him for him to pull that video down, and all the stuff that I had with him on our show has been deleted. So let's see here. What else do we got?
So there was, so he cries wolf on his Twitter page and says that the things that I said were like evoking some kind of violence and stuff. And the last thing that I am is violent. Never been violent in my entire life. Never had a history of violence. And then he just goes with and notice everyone, it happened to be the MTF, not the FTM, which is typical in these cases. He's a hater of
MTFs.
He is just a person who likes the drama.
Yeah, very much so. Anyway, Darcy says, based on Blair's action, here is what I see. She now thinks she's a cis woman now that she's passes with all her feminization surgeries. She bullies those that just started HRT and calls them men. That's just so wrong. That
is terribly wrong. It's
wrong.
like it's a journey for some people, and for a lot of people, it's very difficult as you get older to transition.
Of course, and
for someone to do that to a young person, another young person like her,
that places all the emphasis on looks, and that totally erases what makes a person who they are, which is from the inside. We can't really pay too much attention to these meat suits. Not everybody has the luxury to perform all the surgeries that one needs. Not everybody has the health or at the age that they could afford to do all sorts, not just monetarily, but for your health, to do all the things that you need to do. So for people to learn to respect people's identity is very important. But there's certain groups of people, religious and radfems, and just people that are just closed-minded, that they're so old-fashioned and so black and white that nothing you can tell them will ever change their mind. They're dinosaurs.
Yeah, and if you notice, it's like they just attract the same type of people that I was telling you about. Like when I go to research, so they're in support of Mars and what he's saying. His support of SB 1057. Rad fam.
Of course. Those are the people.
A person that just hates trans people.
Yeah.
It's like, and then they're like, they use the word TERF way too much, and that's a slur, and it's never supposed to be used, and it's like transgender, exclusionary, radical feminists.
These individuals flock to whoever is waving the hate flag towards trans
people. We know they flock to us.
We've been there and done that. We have the t-shirt to prove it. So we know exactly what Mars is doing and where he's heading. And we're in very critical time right now because of the administration that's currently in office right now. There's a lot of religious extremists trying to change the things that Obama put forth. There's a lot of extremist people that are trying to destroy all the years and hard work that we from the LGBT community have accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, people like that are dismantling the things that we fought so hard to achieve.
It's
It's just
disheartening. It's just, it's crazy. And Darcy says,
she plastered a beard on a trans woman named Rachel Williams because she still looks obviously male, yet Rachel has been on HRT for like 3 years.
that's disgusting, really. Not everybody's going to transition into a beautiful, full blossom woman or vice versa. We need to stop looking at this about looks, because we go out in the street, you go into a city and you look at different people. Women come in all shapes and sizes. So do men. There are some men that are 5'2". There are some women that are 6'2". Some women have very well-defined jaws. Because the hormonal bathing and the chromosomal arrangement is very different for everyone. We can't believe for 1 minute that sex is black or white, as most people believe.
And that's the article that we're going to be talking about is, the X and the Y chromosome isn't where all the truth about our sexuality lies. I mean, those are 2 chromosomes. It's 2.
Yeah, it's like
out of the 23.
And that is where the title, the story of a century of misconceptions about X and Y. So the influence of XX, XY model of chromosome sex has been profound over the last century, but it's founded on faulty premises and responsible for encouraging reductive essentialist thinking. While the scientist world has moved on, its popular appeal remains. And this, again, when we had that interaction, that they were trying to get us to say what biology was, and we refused to give them that black and white reductive essential thinking, because their appeal with that still remains. Science has moved on. It's time to move forward.
When the International Astronomical Union reclassified Pluto from a planet to a dwarf planet in 2006, it did nothing to change the fact of the existence of Pluto. Its status, however, is an innocuous example of how science is not always an objective descriptor of reality, but an interpreter loaded with the context of previous generations, how the Greek planetae and the post-Copernican planets were both labels to describe things that moved in the heavens, even if we realized those things weren't actually that similar to each other on closer inspection over time.
The scientist process often involves tweaking taxonomies. Humanity saw distant objects above, and the taxonomy we built was simple. 2 entries, 1 label planets, the other stars. Over time, we added extra things, like asteroids, rocky, and comet, icy, to cover new discoveries. And then even further research and pictures like those returned by Rosetta probe meant that some of the things we thought made asteroids and comets very different were really only a reflection of our perspective. And for what it's worth, at the same meeting in 2006, where the IAU created the new term dwarf planet for objects like Pluto and planet, quote unquote, for, planets, it's also voted to use small solar system body for everything else. This too will pass probably.
We all believe in the existence of comets and asteroids, even though the colloquial distinction between them makes less and less formal sense. Would we bother with 2 different names if we'd only discovered them today? What purpose would drawing the dividing line between them that way would it serve?
Famously, when the first taxidermied duck-billed platypus was sent back to London by naturalists working in Australia, it was believed to be a hoax, as they refused to cohere to the accepted definition of mammals and birds by insisting on being a hairy, warm, blooded creature that laid eggs. The taxonomical status of platypus and the few other egg-laying monument dreams that have yet to become extinct is still a subject of debate to this day. Biologists have found it, as genes usually only present in fish and amphibians, a male platypus even has 10 sex chromosomes, XY, 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 XY instead of the normal 2 for a mammal.
But there's a weasel word here, normal. And with the sex chromosomes, perceptions of normal play a huge role, not only in what we think that they are and do, but in the very existence of the term sex chromosomes. This is the subject of Sarah Richardson's revelatory book, Sex Itself, The Search for Male and Female in the Human Genome, a history of the science of sex and the invention of the sex chromosome concept, one that Richardson argues we should reject entirely as a mistake that has yet led to bad science, social prejudice, and widespread misunderstanding of what sex really is.
Let's repeat this for you guys, in case you're watching Mars and all of you rad fans and Christians. We should reject entirely as a mistake that has led to bad science, societal prejudice, and widespread misunderstanding of what sex really is.
Societal prejudice. Did you hear that, Christians?
Yes. This is the point in talking about this issue where, so to speak, things can fall apart. Just as mammals not only don't lay eggs, but shouldn't, it can come across as a bizarre postmodern self-indulgence to say that humanity isn't split neatly into 2 on the basis of whether they chromosome male XY or female XX. This is a framework that makes intuitive sense to almost everyone because it correlates exactly with sexual dimorphism. Dimorphism.
These are those with penises and those with vagina. And with a bit of luck, combining the 2 means we end up with even more humans that each have their own P or Vs. But like the platypus, it's crucial not to think the taxonomy more important than the reality it's meant to describe.
As Claire Ainsworth writes for Nature, the science of sex has for some years now recognized that sexual characteristics exist on a spectrum.
Spectrum?
Not as a binary.
Wow.
Sex can be much more complicated than it at first seems. According to the simple scenario, the presence or absence of Y chromosome is what counts. With it, you are male, and without it, you are female. But doctors have long known that some people straddle the boundary. Their sex chromosomes say one thing, but they're going at ovaries or testes, or sexual anatomy says another.
Parents of children with these kinds of conditions, known as intersex conditions or differences or disorders of sex development, DSDs, often face difficult decisions about whether to bring up their child as a boy or a girl. Some research now say that as many as 1 persons in 100.
Did we hear that?
1 in 100, okay, has some form of DSD. And those are the ones that are being diagnosed.
Right. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Since the 1990s, researchers have identified more than 25 genes involved in DSDS, and next generation's DNA sequencing in the past few years has uncovered a wide range of variations in these genes that have mild effects on individuals rather than causing DSDS. Mild effects on individuals. Gender dysphoria.
I mean, I know it might be seemingly on a tangent, but we have an article that we would want to share, and we're doing some research on it, on the effects of like what is it when a person has a lazy eye, or
astigmatism and one of the things that I've been researching and noticing that a lot of transgender individuals have lazy eyes. Besides being in the autistic spectrum, there's a lot of things that are neurologically been affected.
And I know that that's crazy talk for some people to think that, maybe these things could all be related, but maybe they are. And we're interested in finding out more information. And we did run into a group on Reddit that were even talking about that, that are trans.
They're trans and they all have lazy eyes. And
Ainsworth's article is an excellent overview of the current state of the science of sex. Richardson, as a historian and philosopher of science, excels at telling of the people whose work and whose mistaken assumptions has misled popular thinking on sex over the years.
She describes how existing sex and gender stereotypes were projected onto chromosomes by early researchers, in turn creating or reinforcing the misunderstanding among the wider public that the strict XX or XY binary is a true synodote?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, for sexual dimorphism, whatever that word is. In reality, there are extremely few sexual characteristics solely controlled by the presence or absence of Y chromosome. And just as there are plenty of characteristics controlled by genes found on another chromosomes, the sex chromosome also carry genes that determine traits that have nothing to do with sex. And before getting on the show, we were also looking at another article that the cells in and of itself could actually be mutated and changed. Ovary cells can end up producing testes cells. And it's just, we haven't even scratched the surface. So for people to be so black and white, so belligerent about this, it's crazy.
It's like, it's like when the person said, the scientific astronomer said, the world is round. Oh no, wait. He said, the earth rotates around the sun. It's not the other way around. And they thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
And they wanted to kill him because he thought that,
There he goes. Mark's air quoting is cracking me up. And Freedom Grower joins us, tuning in late. We'll have to go back and listen. Okay. Thank you for joining us, though. All right. So where were we?
So get this, folks. Y is not the essence of masculinity. That's right. Y is not the essence of masculinity, nor is X that of femininity. Both men and women carry the X gene. They both do.
Mm-hmm.
As Richardson writes, gender has helped to shape the questions that are asked, the theories and models proposed, the research practices employed, and the descriptive language used in the field of sex chromosome research.
Today's scientific and popular literature on the sex chromosome is rich with example of the gendering of the X and the Y, humorous maps of the X and Y chromosome pinned up on laboratory walls, and always good for a laugh in otherwise dry scientific talk, assign stereotypical female and male traits to the X and Y, from the Jane Austen appreciation locus to channel flipping.
The X is dubbed the female chromosome, takes the feminine pronoun she, and has been described as the big sister to her derelict brother that is the Y. And as the sexy chromosome, the X is frequently associated with the mysteriousness and variability of the feminine, as in a 2005 Science article headline, "She Moves in Mysterious Ways." And beginning, the X chromosome is a study in contradictions.
The X is also described in traditional gender terms as the more sociable, controlling, conservative, monotonous, and motherly of the two sexes chromosome. So similarly, the Y is a he and ascribed traditional masculine qualities: macho, active, clever, willy, dominant, and also degenerate, lazy, and hyperactive.
We treat the X and Y chromosomes in a way we'd never think of treating other physical characteristics. Many people who would think it absurd or rude to tell a stranger that, really, you're a male, though, because they have short hair or a P or excess body hair, nevertheless think nothing of doing so when it comes to having XY chromosomes.
Sex itself is a story of how some scientists became convinced that there was something in the body, and then the cell, and then the genome that would literally be sex itself. The only thing that truly mattered for sex, the thing that was its true source, and the thing that finally allowed for a simple causational definition of sex. It's also the story of how the premise of the entire argument was wrong from the start.
Surprisingly, though, the emergence of the sex chromosome concept didn't happen immediately. While the term itself was first coined by Edmund Wilson of Columbia University in 1906 and not generally accepted by the rest of the science world until the 1920s due to its incompatibility with what was already understood about inheritability.
During the 19th century, biologists were fascinated by the diversity of forms of sexual dimorphism and intersexuality in nature. Richardson writes, sex was seen as something that began before conception and which could change before and after birth. Are we hearing this? Could change before and after birth. Experiments with castrated chickens and male guinea pigs given ovaries through transplants gave rise to what was known as the metabolic model, a combination of environmental factors like the health of the parents or the temperature of an egg determine the sex development of the offspring.
By the end of the century, though, microscopes had improved enough to allow biologists to see inside the nuclei of cells, and researchers raced each other to try and identify the cellular evidence that would confirm the theories put forward by Darwin On the Origin of Species in 1859. It didn't take long for chromosomes to be found, but German cytologist Hermann Henking found a weird unpaired chromosome in the sperm of a fire wasp in 1891.
He called it the X element, and others speculated that it might be a degenerated or accessory chromosome that no longer served a purpose, like the appendix in the human gut. Between 1903 and 1906, Nettie Stephen, at Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania, investigated this X element and found that it wasn't alone. There was a tiny Y chromosome hidden right next to it.
Elsewhere, Wilson, who first used the phrase sex chromosomes, also found the Y and agreed with her that its presence seemed to influence the development of male sex characteristics. Richardson takes some time to sardonically note that the extraordinary achievements Stevens, who was never offered a full faculty post, made in the face of few opportunities for women when she applied for postdoctoral funding from the Carnegie Institution in 1903. She assembled stunning letters of recommendation from America's most prestigious cytologists, and none failed to note her brilliance for a woman, of course.
Stevens and Wilson's both agreed that the Y and the X had something to do with sex, but they disagreed as to what. Stevens thought that sex must be one of that trait carried on the X in the same way other chromosomes seem to carry multiple traits. Well, Wilson instead saw them as solely sex determining. There was a whole chromosome effect. One X kept things titled towards maleness, while two X's pushed the balance in favor of femaleness.
The two worked to refute each other until Stevens died in 1912, aged 50. By 1920, Wilson's version of the chromosomal theory of sex won out, as the term sex chromosomes became almost ubiquitous in the scientific literature, displacing accessory chromosomes, heterochromosomes, and idiochromosomes as popular alternative labels. This came after a strong fight for those who disagreed.
Richardson's right of Thomas Montgomery at the University of Philadelphia, who called the sex chromosome theory an absurd and simplistic, are we listening to this? Absurd and simplistic overextension of the chromosome theory of heredity and of Thomas Hunt Morgan, one of the leading figure in the young field of embryology, who blasted it for inventing a special element that has the power of turning maleness into femaleness.
Calling them sex hormones, chromosomes, ran against the accepted convention of naming other chromosomes after their size and structure within a cell, not their function. And there were still unanswered questions. What the hell was going on with the species that reproduce with more than two X accessory chromosomes at a time? What about odd numbers of sex chromosomes? A significant number of species didn't reproduce in line with the neat sex chromosome theory.
Wilson was one of those who tried to integrate the sex chromosomes into the metabolic theory, with sex chromosome hormones and environmental pressure, each influencing how offsprings move through different parts of the sex development spectrum. but the damage, Richardson argues, was done. One of the main reasons the name had such appeal, she argues, is that the 1920s and the 30s was when estrogen and testosterone were first isolated, and the idea of binary sex hormone captured the popular imagination. Do we see where these things?
Hive mind.
Do we see where this all is leading, and how we cannot think that things are just black or white, and base bigotry, hatefulness behind this because of this? Is mad.
This is crazy talk because we think we know what we're thinking and what we've been taught, over the past 100 years. But we realize that what ended up happening was the bigger bully got his way. The bigger champion, the one who beat the other or the one who died off, lost out.
I'm going to share the article there. I'm going to keep reading it, but so that you guys could have it, because this is monumental. This is really monumental.
By the mid 1920s. Okay, well, let's go back to this. One of the main reasons the name had such appeal, she argues, is that the 1920s and 30s was when estrogen and testosterone were first isolated, and the idea of binary sex hormones, just like binary everything, captured the popular imagination. By the mid-1920s, hormones had become, like genes today, the most prominent object of biomedical, pharmaceutical, and popular interest to emerge from modern biology. Sex hormones seized the public imagination and became a node through which ideas were exchanged between scientific theory and cultural norms, ideologies, and expectations.
Scientists promoted the view that sex glands were in the master glands of the endocrine system. Pharmaceutical hormones therapies promise new fertility aids and offer the prospect of a simple, highly effective means of birth control. Many also believed hormones would permit the correction of modernity gender deviance. Feminist spinsters, homosexuals, impotent males, and frigid wives. The endocrinologist pioneer Eugene Steineck promotes testicular transplantation as a medical cure for homosexuality and a rejuvenation therapy for low fertility and listlessness in elderly men.
It was around this time, by the way, that Frank Buckley, the then manager of Wolverhampton Wanderers, started a rumor that he was injecting his players with a serum taken from monkey glands to improve their performance. The sex hormone fad was weird.
In this context, sex chromosome made perfect sense, a matching pair to go with the hormones that determine maleness and femaleness. By the end of the 1930s, the metabolic theory had been discarded in favor of this new model, where the genetic sex XY causes the development of either testes or ovaries, which in turn creates the sex hormones that take care of the rest. This two-stage process was a powerful, mutually self-reinforcing framework for the biology of sex, and the foundation upon which later work like the idea that sex is biological and fixed and gender social and malleable was built. Are we listening to this? The idea that sex is biological and fixed and gender social and malleable was built was all concocted, created, whatever you want to word, because of this.
Back in the 1930s, people. This is not like everybody knows for thousands of years that men and women,
if you have a wee-wee and you have a hoo-hoo, then you're... No.
It's not so old, you guys. I mean, this was decided by a group of doctors or mad scientists back in the end of the 1930s, okay?
Yep.
Right before World War II,
And we're quickly learning that it's all bogus.
And they're the ones who said that the metabolic theory wasn't true.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones who said, oh no, it's simply XX and XY, because that's what causes development of either testes or ovaries, which in turn create the sex hormones that, make it so simple to explain in a very easy fashion.
And Sable Chicken joins us.
Sable Chicken, we know you're bent. You're a Christian.
If there's a bunch of variation, why are we not just enjoying what we got rather than changing things? Because, as we've been trying to explain here, Saber Chicken, if you're not aligned and you're not feeling comfortable in your skin, the science has fortified us that ability to do so. And if we could do so and live happily ever after, why not do it?
Do you think, Sable Chicken, I mean, honestly, as reasonable people that we are, that if Mark and I were content to live our lives as the gender we were assigned at birth, do you not think that that would have been something we would have gladly have done? Do you think we would literally
It would have been so much simpler.
wanted to suffer and deal with these things throughout our lives? Do you think that this is something that we just selfishly indulge? You just, why don't you just rip my insides out?
Yeah.
And why don't you just put some stuff on me?
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not how it works, Sable Chicken.
Why do you have to follow such dogma?
And that's the thing. The dogma aligns with the Christian belief.
Exactly.
It lines perfectly with their black and white, hell, heaven, Jesus, Satan world. I mean, that's good and bad. There's no gray area in
Why
Christianity.
use a car when you have perfectly two legs? Why use a washing machine when you could wash with your hands? It's called advancement. It's called betterment. It's called things that we could do to make ourselves feel better. That's part of evolution, right? This can be seen in how the sex chromosomes began to influence debates on gender and sexuality. There was a speculation that the Y chromosome represses, quote unquote, the feminine X, or that the femaleness is the absence of maleness, or the greater intellectual variability among males, i.e., why male researchers thought that men were smarter than women. Women was down to the lottery of having a single X chromosome. With two X's, unusual recessive traits would be more commonly repressed, but with one, rare genes presumed responsible for genius must be allowed through.
And similarly, early women's rights activists and feminists, as well as male writers like the anthropologist Ashley Montagu, seized on the idea of having twice as much X as men as a scientific justification for what was really women's biological superiority over the male. The idea of the X and Y carrying sex itself was entrenched, helped by the fashionable eugenics of the time that saw biology as the justification for a range of racist, sexist, and classist prejudices that exist to this very day.
Yep. This only became worse after the Second World War, with discoveries of DNA and the first specific chromosome cause for certain illnesses like Down syndrome caused by an extra chromosome 21. The fashion was to think that genetics as the reductive answer to everything. It felt like every physical characteristic, from eye color to height to intelligence to sex, was caused by the presence or absence of a single gene or set of genes. The sex chromosome of the 1930 hormonal model, the genetic human coli underlying sexual dimorphism, as Richardson calls them, fit perfectly into this new paradigm.
Karyotypes became widely known, giving people perhaps the real iconic image of the human genome. The sex chromosomes were shoved to the margin or to the end of the last row, accentuating their perceived difference, the format still used to this very day.
Sex itself, do we have something to share some more? Because I want people to feel...
Darcy says, biological males with the 1X chromosome, aka as a pair XY, wouldn't that mean males are also females? Well, I mean, males carry the same X chromosome that females carry. Females have a extra chromosome that is in storage and kind of like is dormant.
Yes.
And the male carries the extra little Y chromosome.
And I think it's even deeper than that. I think that they still...
As far as we've been taught.
They still don't know. I think Because we have the capability of being both male or female. That's why, and I mentioned this yesterday, males have nipples and their scrotum has a line where the labia minora closed and the ovaries dropped and became testicles. I think there's so much more that we are not being told. I think the brain has a lot to do with, our identity. I think the neurological system also has to do a lot with our identity. And I think the environment in and of itself also plays a massive role. I don't think there's one single factor. I don't think we could put people in a box as much as religion, politics are trying to do so. And Mario Graves joins us. Marlo, I'm sorry. Marlo Graves joins us. You can see from afar. So
she says Australian geneticist Dr. Jenny Marshall Graves has done some great research and giving some great presentations on how chromosomes affect us. Seems like she just did a YouTube presentation a few months ago about genetics and gender identity.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, that people don't know.
Sable Chicken asks,
so you are aligned with science. What does that question have to do? We're trying to bring information out that is being released and seen to break away from the typical black and white. If you have a hoo-hoo, you're a this, and if you have a ha-ha, you're a that. If, whether science is the answer, whether spirituality, whatever it is, the answer is enough of the bigotry, enough of the dogma, enough of trying to place people in a box. So whatever it takes to prove that, then we're down with.
Marlo wants to call.
Does she? Let me open up the voice. Did you put the number there? Okay.
The phone lines are open.
It's still going on. Yes, the phone lines are open.
So yeah, while we wait for Marlo to call, did you want to keep going?
Okay, so where were we?
Sex itself has plenty of stories about the general public not understanding that X and Y are not all there is to sex. But it has even more when it comes to scientists leaning on the theoretical models built on sand, not realizing until too late, though that isn't to say this was true of everyone. Richardson finds plenty of evidence of geneticists struggling to figure out how much influence they should really ascribe to the X and to the Y.
I'm going back again on that comment that chicken. Why is it that extremists always have to have this totally sarcastic attitude?
Call from.
Hello.
Hey, how are you? It's Marlo again.
Hey, how are you?
I've got me great. Looks like I've got me another hobby, hanging out with the Cummings, right?
Yes.
Calling into the Cummings.
Yes.
I just stumbled upon this. I didn't turn in regularly. I talked to you a couple weeks ago when you were talking about trans pronouns at the workplace. So I definitely appreciate your insight. I'm doing some research. I'm in a program at pharmaceutical bioengineering program at the University of Washington, and I've been really interested in studying like hormones and genetics and like transgenderism, but mostly intersex people. But I know every crossover in the amount of information. So one of the things that I've stumbled over is there's a geneticist in Australia. Her name is Jenny Marshall to me. Just an inspiration, and she's done a lot of research on chromosomes, and she had the brains and balls, and it was talking about how the X chromosome, how the chromosome affect the brain. I really didn't realize, how much there was that we still didn't know about hormones, or that we really kind of ignored. And I really liked the picture you had with putting the X and Y's all over. Yeah. Very insightful.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to prove, because there's a lot of dogma behind that. a lot of dogma to telling people if you're an X sex and you're a female, if you're an XY, you're a male. If you have a P, you're a male. If you have, and it doesn't work that way. And that's old thinking. You know, that's people are stuck on that. And that is dinosaur. You know?
And what we're finding out is that this was all constructed back in the 1930s to be working for whatever the pharmaceuticals wanted or whatever big government wanted, you know? So it all had a plan. There was a purpose for it. And it's a way to subjugate men and women and to tell them that they're distinctly different, when in reality, there are not that many differences between the male and the female as we would want to say there are.
Well, now I would disagree with that, because I know that those flaws have led us into just testing medicine on males, and then we realize later, hey, you know, women aren't just smaller men. Or even when it comes to children, like boys aren't just small men. Like there's such a difference. And you know, for the most part, I think a lot of, you know, traditionally XX, you know, female, and then we'll identify as women, and then XY male. But it is interesting to know that there, you know, is a lot of space in between. And I didn't even realize that different species had different ways of determining sex. Like some do it by temperature. Like I know you started talking about part of that. I timed in late, so I don't know how much about that you said. But my question is, have you ever considered doing getting like your DNA done? Out of curiosity, I mean, I'd like to learn more about myself. There's a project that the government is running called oh dear, where they're trying to get everyone's they're trying to, for health purposes, they're trying to get people to submit samples of their DNA so that scientists can study, you know, the same populations over and over again. 23andMe also lets you do things like that. So I'm wondering if the two of you have ever had any interest in getting like
that's kind of scary.
That is very invasive, it would seem.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. If that gets in the wrong hands, and God knows what they plan to do with stuff like that. I don't know if I would feel safe to do something like that with some side of government project. Not a fan.
Yeah, I understand. I'm normally conspiracy theorist myself. The project is called All of Us. It's mainly to get like people to get health data and stuff. They're just beginning of it. And I'm just throwing it out there if anybody was ever curious, because I tend to be, you know, very wary of many things myself. But I was just curious of, you know, even if you could find out personally without ever putting it in the system, have you ever had any interest in finding out any genetic information about yourself?
I would, but I wouldn't want it being done by any kind of government agency or any kind of mad scientist that they might try cloning or doing some weird. I don't know. There's just, you know, you never know. This day and age, there's a lot of strange people out there doing strange things.
And they are doing things. Yeah. You know, there's reports out of China that they're doing some really weird things. You know, so. We've
gotten out of hand, and I probably phrased it incorrectly with calling it the government inspired thing. But it's very interesting to hear all the things that you're adding to the conversation and really getting down into it. So I'm definitely appreciating that people dig deeper, because a lot of the conversations on the net just seem so surfacey. So I'm glad that the two of you are really digging down to this and learning more. But out of curiosity, last question: would you ever be interested in having like 23andMe do something like that? Again, I'm not pushing. I don't have any investment in any of these companies or anything. But I know me. I'm so curious that I was thinking. Have you ever considered doing anything like that? That can do a commonality maybe you have with other transgender people.
I wouldn't be interested, but if you're more than welcome to shoot the link here on the chat for anybody who would be interested.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So anyway, just appreciate your sharing, because I know it's definitely hard to be vulnerable and put yourself out there. So I know a lot of people may throw arrows at you, but definitely appreciate you willing to engage in conversation and answer questions. I know it helps a lot.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Marlo.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you, Marlo, for that. And so let's see here. Saving Chicken says, I tell you.
I mean, it's like a never-ending
I know.
banner waving,
they're like
Christian flag
they're relentless.
assault.
Relentless. Reproduction is binary.
Genesis says
But
this, and the
we
Bible says
all
that.
human, so both sexes fall into the human spectrum. Transgender is the opposite.
No, we're not
We're
all
not,
human.
yeah.
We are encased in these physical bodies, but my spirit is free from human
Meat suits.
being. I am
Yeah.
energy. I am eternal. I am a spirit. I am not a gender. I am not a face. This is, I know it's beyond what you can understand and what you've been taught,
Yeah.
but it's like people think made in the image of God or something, that we're physically this, but it's like thinking that
Put it this way, there's a lot that you don't know. If you really dig deep, put the Bible aside, go into really deep studies of what and who we are. Just like all this news with what the chromosomes and all, it's all dinosaur material. There is more than meets the eye.
Sexes are human. Let's make that distinction.
Yeah.
The quarantining of these physical bodies into differentiated humans is real. I mean, that's no doubt. But my spirit is not a sex.
Right. So Darcy says transgender also falls into the binary when you transition through biological hormones, therapy, and surgical procedures or processes. Yes, indeed.
And Terry says, "Do not give DNA." When she started going on that,
I'm
I was
like,
gosh,
no, not me. I'm not getting
like,
chipped. I'm not giving no DNA.
way.
I'm not doing none of that
Do you
stuff.
realize what people could do with DNA information?
Oh, goodness.
I mean,
yeah. And it's sad because, we're living in a very scary world. Okay.
A phone call
Another
from
phone.
unknown.
Who?
To accept, press
Okay,
1.
let's see who it is. We couldn't hear who it was. Who
Who is
this?
Hello, hey, this is Freedom Grower. I've been watching your show for a little bit here, and
Nice.
I'd call in and say hi.
Hello.
Hi, Freedom Grower.
How
Thank
are
you for
you?
calling.
How you
I'm doing
doing?
great.
Good. Good. So
Enjoying the conversation. I had to skip in and out a little bit, so I didn't catch all of it, but I will go back and listen to the whole episode and make sure I get all the information.
appreciate it.
Interesting conversation, though.
Yeah, there's so much that people don't know, just as much as people don't know about who this source of creation really is and who we are. And it blows my mind that in this day and age, people are still wanting to be so black and white. And there is so much to be discovered and so much hidden knowledge. It's exciting, at the same time, but it's frustrating too when you get people that keep pushing and pushing and trying to just force their old beliefs and create all sorts of bigotry and hateful and fearful regimens because of what their political intentions are, Sad.
What do you view as the solutions for that? How do you think we come together as people, knowing that and everyone?
You kind of broke up a little bit. How do we solve the solution knowing that as people, and that's what we caught?
Here, I'll tell you what, I tried to do this on my computer, on my Google Voice, but I'm going to call you back on my other line. I'll call you right back.
Okay. Sounds
It'll
good.
work.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Darcy said he ate too much. He feels nappy.
I feel like napping too.
Yeah, we had a lot of food too. A lot of sugar, which I don't like to put in my system, but
yeah,
that's how it goes. Yeah, as we were saying, what Freedom Grower called, so I meant to say, but it came out wrong. There's so much that we don't know, and it's frustrating, when people are all battling, and this is what I think, and nobody's listening to anybody, because that's literally what happens. Nobody listens. Everybody gets all butt hurt. And I think he was asking what kind of solution do we think that there will be? And I don't know. I think until people learn to listen and be less judgmental, and try to not be so black and white. Because nothing in this world is black and white, as we're learning with each passing day,
I think it's a generational thing. And I think it's like it's just gotta kind of like wear off,
Yeah.
over time. It's just going to go away, but it doesn't just happen, and you can't just extract it because it's so embedded into societal thinking that it would take like a sea change in just the attitudes and the spirits of the people that are coming up in the generations. And I see it happening, but we can't just see it on a daily thing or on a yearly thing. Because
and I think there's a lot of hive mind where people don't understand that, but there is a lot of
Freedom.
there we go. You're back on
awesome.
the air.
All right.
Thanks, guys. So the question I was asking was, knowing that we are divided as a species, in the sense that we have so many different viewpoints on how to approach things, how do we move forward? Is it just trying to be, of a loving spirit, and you need to be more open-minded and realize that you're not going to make everybody think the same, or is it, what do you view as a solution?
I think so. I think that we need to stop wearing our feelings on our sleeves, and we need to stop allowing ego to take over. And I know that's hard, because when it comes to religion, when it comes to things like sexuality or identity, ego flares up. But if we learn to be compassionate and learn to coexist, and stop being so defensive and me-centered, then maybe there'll come a time when we could unite and coexist. I think as the older generation dies down and the newer generation that is a lot more open and more accepting, things will even itself out.
Yeah. It's a long, hard, painful process.
It is, but that's part of our spiritual evolution, don't you think? I mean, it's like the shedding of the old skin and, giving birth. I mean, what more painful process than that? But it's birthing pain. It's
growth only comes through pain. I mean, if you're at a gym and you're working out, I mean, the only
to
way
build
to build muscle is to tear the old one down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's going to be a painful
I do
process.
see that.
Yeah. I have hope.
I mean, that's the greatest lessons I've learned, has been through pain and tribulation and struggle, your fiery trials, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it definitely formed me and built character, and also just empathy, compassion. Because when you feel what it's like to hurt, you understand when other people are going through that.
That's
exactly.
the truth.
That is the truth.
Yeah. I look at, from spirituality, I look at I guess I look at it the same as what you were saying, Mark, where we are one in spirit, where we have no male or female, we have no identity, we're not slaves, we're not the one enslaving people, we're pure, we're perfect in that sense. There's nothing missing, nothing broken.
Exactly.
Then, but from the outside, you were saying the other day, you view that even maybe the plastics and all this stuff that's toxicity in our systems and building up could be looked at as a good thing, that it's leading us back to, I had never thought.
Oh, did we lose you?
Consideration, and I think it's an interesting point. And I'm not saying you're wrong either. It's just we don't know for sure, right? How do we know with absolute certainty?
Yeah. Hold on.
Our speaker just
kind of died, so I'm trying
our
to
speaker sometimes just turns off.
Trying to figure out if.
But it's okay.
Oh, now can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good.
Yeah, we can hear you just on the computer speaker. Yeah, I think it's all part of the evolution. I think that everything that happens, we humans are so used to saying, "Oh, this is a bad thing," but within that bad thing, good things happened. And we have to.
Of course, the pain, just like we're talking about, the thing you think is a struggle is your greatest teacher.
Exactly. I think we just need to be patient. I think we just need to learn how to reflect, go inward, and just try to understand that there's a purpose behind everything. Is it
silly thing? I'm going to turn it off.
Yeah. Now our speaker decided to go back in and back
people,
out.
That have not had say they're in some community or culture where they have not had any consideration to other alternative lifestyles or whatever. But then you realize, like, statistically, the same amount of children will be transgender or have gay tendencies or any of these things that in other parts of society. And so I have a personal view that the way we solve our problems is tribalism and community, meaning like on a local level, it's okay to be different, right? We'll have different cultures, different values. But when I look at the LGBTQ circumstances, as me personally, a white male, and I hate to even say that because it's so-called white, I don't like that identity, but people look at me and that's what they think. You're a white middle-aged male with, heterosexual with 2 kids, so you are this. And I find all these stereotypes, while we've become politically correct and sensitive where people can't even talk now, but then we're to the point where we're so segregated, we can't even have a conversation to talk about, well, how do we accept the fact that we're different and have productive lifestyles? And so I don't know how you guys view this, but have you ever thought about that from a communal standpoint, like we should have different cultures and values, and maybe that's part of why we're so pitted against each other is we're not allowed to be different.
I like your thinking when you first said, well, what's the solution? Because people always are quick to point out problems, but they never find solution. Do I feel that our differences are a good thing? Of course. And I believe that we are all from different species that have come to this planet and created their colony and created this experiment we call life. And it's probably a prerequisite until we go to the next level, kind of like a video game. And if we can't get along here where we're like sub-level, we don't have the abilities that we'll have in other higher levels, then we're staying here till we get it right. So I think that there is a reasoning behind our differences, and it's important for us to accept that, honor our differences, respect them. And I think eventually we will, evolve and get to where we need to go,
Yeah. But I wonder how it plays into it, because when I view it like society flourishing, it would be this limited government that doesn't, oppress communities. So on a local level, people could be sustainable. They'd have sustainable industry. They'd be growing their food. Then you also have the opportunity for these really closed mind systems where a very bigoted group of people, they don't like people of certain color, or they, if a child comes, you see that type of mentality. When people get that sick, they'll kill their own child because they're different or something.
And that's scary.
And I think that's why people lean towards the federal government. They wanted some overruling, values, but then it became this big bloated thing where we can't even talk anymore to solve our problems. We couldn't actually have a solution. It would have to be the government that would implement it.
And that's kind of dangerous too. So it's kind of like that we return back to our roots of tribalism, where you had the elders that, made the decisions and things of that nature, and everybody had their tribe. And I don't know, it's kind of really hard to find the true solution and say what's better. I know that I don't like too much government because that gets very dangerous as well. I think we've got to learn as we go along, growing pains. And,
I appreciate that answer, because that's exactly how I feel. I don't know either, but I'm really contemplating those things right now.
Yeah, and it's important to.
But it isn't an easy answer. It's like, either way, it's just the duality of everything in this existence. There's injustices that happen on either side, and it's like the love and compassion and forgiveness needs to overwhelm that, but also be cognizant that these things it seems like it's inevitable that they happen on the physical realm somehow.
I know.
This has always happened.
And I think that's why we're here on this planet, to figure those things out.
And if we realize that we're the ones that are creating our own reality on a day-to-day basis, we're the ones that are giving ourselves these challenges, because at the end of the day, we're the ones who signed up to come down here in the first place, so.
Yeah. It's hurtful when I hear leaders of movements say, they want to reach across the aisle or different political boundaries or whatever. And then they talk about they want to reach to the Black community or whatever, but then they're going to ostracize LGBTQ or transgender, and you guys don't get to have a voice at the table. You're not, and that really hurts everyone, and it's a painful thing to hear that we're at that point where, people who claim to be enlightened and have come out of their religious indoctrinations, and yet they're still going to say, these people here, they don't get to have a voice.
Exactly.
And so, and I have a channel, it's only a couple K. I'm sure you'll probably not agree with everything I say, but that's not the point. The point is that there's things that we all can agree on, or I think we should.
Exactly.
Like Jeff Doherty, everybody. Jeff Doherty needs to get his head out of his ass. Everybody has a right at the table to have a voice in the conversation.
Exactly.
And that's why we're in this situation, is because real people haven't. It's been these so-called elites that have been controlling us and enslaving us.
Dividing so they could conquer us and getting us to pit one another against one another, and then trying to erase our voices. And that's the beginning of 1984.
And we appreciate you saying that, mentioning that, because, that was something that we were very concerned about.
Yeah.
And we voiced that, opinion to Jeff. And, he seemed to say, hey, stay in your lane. You get your rights, just go live your life. Just keep me out of it. I don't want to be a part of your life. And it's like, this tribalism mentality where it's like, hey, you colored person, you drink from that fountain and keep this fountain for us whites. It's like, that's not how the world works. That's not how, we can build a better society, for the future.
Exactly.
Yeah, there has to be respect. Even if someone has different values, different views, there has to be basic common decency and respect for each other. And I don't know that we ever had it. It's like, it's not like back in the past we could say, oh, look how respectful everybody was then. No, people were enslaving people then.
It's always
people,
been,
and still are.
Yeah, and still are. The only difference now, we're not in plantations and we don't have shackles around our ankles, but we're still slaves.
Yeah.
Just don't see the shackles.
And anytime someone comes for a solution, it's like, well, here, everybody can be free except for these people. These ones here, they don't get to be, they're not worthy of it or whatever. And according to whose judgment, that I think that the idea of like Bill of Rights is a beautiful thing. And I think some kind of foundational principles is what, there needs to be guiding principles for society, but the government itself, that's where I do go back to the community thing that, okay, it's not so you have people drinking from some water fountain and other people can't, because that's not common decency or respect. The basic value everybody should have would be, like Jesus said, or you could say in a bunch of different ways, but love people the way you want to be loved. If you want to be poked in the eye, then go poke people in the eye. But if you'd rather people be, understanding and empathetic,
and you would think that would be common sense, right? You would think that would be common sense, that all of us want to be treat others the way we want to be treated, but I've always said hurt people, and we come with a lot of baggage and a lot of trauma from childhood. And I think we are here to release those baggages, just like a hot air balloon can go up unless you start getting rid of all that heavy sandbags. That's the same thing with us.
And there's just a lot of projecting that happens, in society today. And this really toxic environment that that is created here on social media, where people can anonymously just write out 280 characters on Twitter and say something and then be misunderstood, and then the other person argue, and it's like, it's almost like the system sets itself up to defeat you. And we have to rise above that.
It does. No, I think you're absolutely right. It does. And that's what we're facing is, so a lot in the past, people would go out and they'd have picket signs and they'd stand in front of buildings. And now you see all the pictures, they just get pepper sprayed and removed. And I look at it that this is the technological era.
It is.
Unite through technology. And we can do passive, peaceful protests by finding smart, intelligent people in Google, in these, fight them from within. Find people with common sense that have people they love, they have values and common sense. But we need to create some kind of, I don't know. because then it sounds like a religion again and a doctrine. Here, make a book.
Yeah, and that's what's scary, Freedom. That's what's scary because something starts with good intent, and then all of a sudden it becomes politicized. It becomes a religion. It gets marketed, and then it loses its value.
Right.
It's really sad. Yeah, it's what are the answers?
That is so frustrating.
It is, and you think, what are the answers? How can we change this? And I think change starts from within, because I feel truly that we're all connected. We're all
I agree.
just totally connected. So if we start changing from within, like the hive mind, it just starts to spread. But we're always angry. We're always terrified. We're always guilty. We have all these feelings that constantly bombard us. And then we spread those feelings to each other. So we need to calm ourselves down, go into that quiet, peaceful place, reflect and heal. And I think as we each do that, there might be some solution.
And it's really hard to give yourself to more than like 5 or 10 people in your life at a time, so reaching the masses is in a really
Deep
generalized way, but touching each individual, one by one, like your kids, your wife, your
neighbor,
family, your neighbor, that's where it really begins, and that's where it begins for all of us.
Right.
I agree. Yep. And there's and solve all the world's problems, but really it is, we got to go inside, clean our own cups and do this work.
Exactly. Because we're always so quick to point fingers and want to fix other people. I know I've done that through my entire life instead of going within, and that's why I've dealt with a lot of issues, which finally I started going within. And once you do that, it's amazing. Once you start doing the work, how the healing begins.
I mean, on one level, I say, okay, well, it's not my place to fix people because I got to fix myself. On another level, I look at the world and I say, you have the majority of people that they won't even have an open on the hamster wheel so hard that these topics, they're just leaving it for CNN or Fox or the government to deal with it. And then everybody blames the government. They say, oh, the government's the problem. But yet we, the people, are not engaged. We're not we're voting with our energy, and we're not putting energy into these topics to say, no, I'm represented. I want to make sure that I'm not ignoring a safe, healthy society for my kids and my kids' kids, because what is happening right now looks like race wars and just more ramping up of this whole debt system where they're going to pull the rug out and turn the lights out on the financial stuff while they deal with that. And then we're all in the streets in mayhem or something, or, 9/11 or whatever's next.
Mad Max, which is, it's crazy, but that's where we need to do the internal work and start building community and stop relying so much on the government, stop being so commercialized, so involved with corporations and things of that nature. We need to return back to basics.
I think so.
Return to oneness.
Yeah, and stop feeding into the distractions that have been set up to keep us from really contemplating things.
I know it's easier said than done, but one step at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yeah. It's just good to bounce it off other people and you see how other people's approaches are. And I feel like I'm constantly confirmed. People have the same anxiety, the same frustrations, but when we really look at it, to do, well, you have to be the change first, and then that will impact, like you say, maybe it's only 5 people that you touch and impact on your day-to-day life, but it is going to have an effect, and that ripple will move out, and hopefully in my lifetime, I can feel like I made an impact on some level, because I do feel like I'm here to exhaust and get all this stuff out, but then at the same time, I don't know, did humanity get worse while I was here? I think it did.
Yeah, I think it has. It really, I think instead of evolving, we're devolving somehow, which is pretty sad.
Yeah, I don't want to have my fingerprint on that, I don't want to be to go down as being part of the energy that drug it down further. I hope that on one level, it's just because I do see it all as energy, that we're part of the ones pushing the energy in the other direction. But I don't want to just judge myself as good and that they're all bad either. It's like I realize, I've been a part of the hate. I've been a part of the hurt. I've been hurt. I've been the victim. I've been the one who's been hated for who I am, and it's just the cycle needs to stop.
Yeah, we've all played the different roles in this stage we call life, and I think that's what we're here to do. I really do. I think sometimes it's like the Matrix, and there's things that we have to do to get to a certain level, and we have to experience certain pains and cause certain pains. And we as humans love to label things, but things just are, and they're meant to be. And sometimes I think we just need to relax a little bit and trust that everything is going to be all right.
I mean, sometimes we're the angel, sometimes we're the devil, and that is the basis of what it means to be human, is working through those dark moments and, having a great time up in the high mountains and stuff like that. But, realizing that every situation that we're placed in life, whether it's as a villain or as the hero, it's like, there's a purpose, there's a plan.
Everything plays a part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, gosh.
Well said, Lynna. I agree.
Yeah. Well, awesome conversation, guys. Make sure to check out his channel. Go ahead and put your
definitely check it out for sure.
Put down your information on the chat so people could check you out, and we'll definitely check your channel out. Thank you so much for calling and for your insight.
And maybe you could come on the show sometime.
Thanks, Lynna.
Yeah.
Oh, what was that?
Maybe you could come on the show sometime.
Yeah, get interviewed.
Yeah, and get interviewed. Like,
we usually interview people. Yeah.
Put a face to.
I'd be glad to. Yeah, you bet. My email is thefreedomgrower@gmail.com, and let's stay in contact.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Have a happy Saturday.
Hey, have a great night.
Take care. You too.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Marlo. Marlo gave us $5 donation. She said, I just love the face you made when I suggested you submit your DNA to a government project.
Yeah.
I will definitely take a screenshot of that photo.
Let's see. How do we do it? It was like,
I don't know. I was like, government, DNA.
Government.
No.
Taking my DNA.
Yes.
I mean, it would be interesting. I would admit, finding out your karyotype and all that stuff, but I don't know. Some of it I've heard is a sham. Some of it,
it's scary.
They tell you you're from Scandinavia,
or they're
Rican.
putting all our information into
just some database.
Yeah, I don't know. And I know that's
not like the government already doesn't know, but
I just I don't need to know. I'm fine. I'm fine with who I am. I don't really have the desire of really knowing things like that. But thank you so much, Marlo. And
and I'm glad we could give you some comical relief today, tonight.
And thank you, Freedom Grow, for calling in. That was insightful.
So what was it? This concept of transgendering I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Transgendering could be conditioning people into transhumanism.
What's transgendering? Is there a machine that we go into and they transgender us?
There was a cartoon that I saw. It was Speed Buggy, and they were going to the island of Amazonia where the Amazonian women were, and they were changing them into women because only women can live in Amazonia. So I'm just wondering if it's like some kind of a machine that you go into to get transgendered.
I wanted to tell Sable Chicken that this transhumanism that everyone, especially a lot of the religious sectors and people that are fighting what's happening, fear. We are already transhumans. We are already a hybrid. There's absolutely nothing to fear. I mean, what could possibly be the worst case scenario? That we improve our health, that we become smarter, faster, live longer? Because right now, as a species, we're like, really, we're not even fit for the environment unless we wear, if you're in the cold weather and then you don't have a coat, you'll freeze to death. Your brain deteriorates as you get older. You get diseases and slow down and get all brittle. I mean, there's this fear that they really try to instill in people. If they could give you a shot that will regenerate every cell in your body, make you faster, stronger, healthier, what is so wrong with that? I mean, the so-called Yahweh that created us, he did a terrible job.
Well, I mean, people don't understand that we have been
Genetically modified
genetically
already
altered
by
I mean,
the Elohims.
but see, we were not this. That's the thing. We were not this. This is not what we were.
Mm-mm.
This is what we fell into. And, you know, Jeff Doherty and the Cummings may have their differences, but there's a thing that he talked about in his book, Serpent and Doves. And it was an interesting thing because it's like we were placed into these meat suits and tricked. Our physical reality was birthed as a form of a counterfeit.
Yeah, we were homo luminous. In other words, we were light beings. We were spirit.
Called it Elohumans.
Yeah.
You know, that we existed outside of the physical reality. We lived in another type of dimensional existence. And this is what is a result of us falling into, and if they want to talk about the fall, it's when we fell into these bodies, you know, that these Elohims, these archons tricked the spirit of us into.
So maybe the government should be breeding us like cattle. I think we already do that. We already breed like cattle. And I think that it's not the government that's breeding us like cattle. It's
I don't know. I don't know what
Yahweh.
to think of that statement, because part
sarcasm.
of me thinks that it's sarcasm.
Well, that's
and Christians are very really good at being sarcastic. I don't understand. You know, I don't understand, other than maybe I find it when Elijah said, hey, maybe your God is taking a dump or something. That's why he's not dropping his fire on this altar. When Elijah was up in the mountain and he was against the false prophets and trying to put on a parade of whose God is who. That's the only time I've seen sarcasm. So I don't know is Jesus a sarcastic person?
Probably.
I mean, because isn't it what would Jesus do in that? What you guys used to wear on your bracelets? I don't get it.
But disabled chickens are always known for that.
Transgenderism.
Transgendering. But yeah,
I think that's a Walt Heyer statement. Those transgenders, as if they're like, you know, I don't know, transgender-ing. It's like a verb.
If anything, this Elohim came along and divided, because we were once both male and female. And this Elohim came along, or the Yahweh guy, and just like divided and created all this stuff. Let's see, maybe government has already been breeding us like cattle, more like oxen working their fields. Yes, that's more like it.
There you go. Yeah, we have been.
Yeah.
I mean, the cowboys take the cattle up across into like to get them to the stockyards and stuff, and you know that's what they did. And it seems like the government does the same with a lot of people, you know.
So I mean, the article.
So let's keep going till we finish it, because it's a very good article.
Okay.
No, I'm just back because we didn't talk about the SRY.
So, but that's we don't want to.
There was no link. Yeah, but people stay up, right? You guys stay up, don't you? Seems like people stay up. I would hate to just destroy this article.
No, we haven't destroyed it.
Taking apart.
Let's go here. Let's go.
But there's more information. It's kind of, it flows. Right here.
Okay. So.
Okay. Richardson finds plenty of evidence of geneticists struggling to figure out how much influence they should really ascribe to the X and the Y. One particularly damning example is that of the so-called supermale.
There's a supermale.
You have to give me the... Yeah.
Supermale.
The discovery by a researcher that an unusually high number of men incarcerated in an Edinburgh prison had an extra Y chromosome, making them XYY males, leading to speculation that it predisposes its carriers to unusually aggressive behavior.
Hmm.
The amount of time spent investigating this hypothesis and its influence on pop culture is astounding.
So the so-called XYY syndrome was mainstream target investigation in the most prestigious journals of biology, genetics, and cytogenetics. By 1970, nearly 200 papers on the link between XYY and aggression had appeared in the scientific literature. Between 1960 and 1970, XYY research comprised 82% of all published scientific studies on the human Y chromosome. It accounts for 28% of the entire body of Y chromosome research generated in the quarter century between 1960 and 1985.
As Jeremy Green records, by the early 70s, there had been at least 2 thriller films in which the main character is a violent criminal driven by a chromosome abnormality, a series of crime novels with an XYY hero who constantly wrestles with his inner compulsion to commit crimes, and as a spin-off from the novels, the TV series called The XYY Man. The Oxford English Dictionary cites Peter Cave's 1974 Dirtiest Picture postcard as the earliest English language usage of the Y chromosome in a non-scientific text. You've buttonholed me to give me long and boring lectures upon Germaine Greer, the faulty Y chromosome, and the drudgeries of housework and childbearing.
But of course, there was no link between having an extra Y chromosome and an extra maleness.
Oh boy.
But somebody else is calling. Okay.
Call from.
Yes?
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
Who is it? Hello.
Hello.
Hi, you guys. I know you guys. You guys know me.
Who's this?
Hello?
Yes, who's this?
Yes, hello.
I'm a loser. That's all I have to say, really. I mean, I don't know. I'm just a loser person.
Why would you say that?
Because I am. I was right.
Trying to remember who that is. Used to call before. David? No.
Why don't you just listen to me instead of trying something to me?
Trying to figure out who you are. Your name.
Well, you don't have to figure out who I am.
It would be nice to know the name of who we're talking to.
I'm a loser. I'm a loser.
Okay, loser, then what is the purpose of your call?
Guys, I'm really confused.
You're really
But that's okay. Like, I'm confused by myself too.
Everybody
Like
gets
there's-
confused, yeah.
There. You know, I'm not like thing. I'm just saying that I don't.
We're listening.
Like, well, I want the best for both of you. I think both of you are good people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But I think I watched the interview with the podcast guy, the podcast trans guy or whatever.
Okay.
And I've been following, and I have seen the journey that both of you have gone on. Well, I don't understand how to understand it. How do you go from where you were a year ago to where you are now?
It's called evolution. It's called growth. It's called self-reflection. It's called making mistakes. It's called Picking yourself up from the ground, wiping your knees, picking your head up and going forward. It's called breaking away from childhood programming, from self-hatred, from being shamed all your life and believing those words and then turning around and saying, no, this is not who I am.
Seems like you're going in circles.
Sometimes we have to go in circles.
You're constantly attacking people who are outside of your circle.
Not attacking anyone.
When you were an anti-Christian, you attacked Christians. You attack non-Christians. When you're trans, you attack non-trans. When you're trans, you know what I'm saying?
I don't attack anyone that doesn't attack me first. I don't never draw first blood. Never. Hey, Marcy.
Hey, Marcy.
What do you think about people who feel that there's a serious problem here with how you guys whiplash between one thing and the other?
That's nobody's problem but our own. It's our life. We share our life because we want to, but it's nobody's problem, or it doesn't take away from food from your table. It doesn't take away from your life. We bring you to our life, but
Mark, that assumes that everybody is always going to just follow everything you say.
But they don't have to.
Nobody's compelling them to do
Am I asking you to do something? I mean, people tune in because they want to. I think that we are very dynamic and ever growing individuals, and a lot of people respect that.
Well, I tune in because I like you guys. I like you.
Okay.
You guys are good people. But there's something wrong. There's something seriously wrong with how easily you can go from one thing to the other.
Well, I don't understand necessarily where you're going with this, because
let's turn this around. You call in, you don't tell us who you are, you say you're a loser, but then you're angry at yourself, you're hurting, and you're trying to lash out at us. I have no problem with my life and what I've done. Exactly. As a matter of fact, I'm very happy with the way my life has gone. I've gone down to hell and come back up. And every time I go down, I learn something new. And that's a beautiful thing. Instead of being stagnant, and I don't ever call myself a loser.
Honestly, before Mark even met me, Mark was a fierce trans advocate from the very beginning of his transition, right up until 2015. And then something happened. And honestly, I came into his life and things changed because I came with baggage. I came with preconceived religious conceptions and things, and families, the whole concept of, getting in an accident and recovering, and my transition, whether I was going to be capable of transitioning or not. I mean, there was a lot of pain that I divorced. We married within a month of my divorce. I mean, there was a lot of trauma, that we had to go through. And there was a lot of things that Mark had buried in the past that he did not want to even bother to dig up, that I forced him to dig up because of the situation with me. So if you want to blame anyone...
Lynna, I'm sorry. You were right there sitting at his side when he was Maritza.
Yes, I was, and I know why he did that. He did it because he was getting back at me.
Why did you go through with it again?
Go through with what?
Go through with the detransition, retransition. Why did you do that yet again?
Because I had to. There were things that I had to work through. There were traumas that I needed to go through, and I needed to do what I needed to do.
I mean, I accepted Mark when he came to me as Maritza back in July, when we got back together, and his folks got all ticked off at me for coming back into his life, and but I don't understand why this has to turn into a personal.
The bottom line is why are people so invested
I don't understand why
whatever it is.
So
we
important.
Share it, but I mean, how does that affect you?
Well, that's the thing, Mark. You share your journey. People are invested in your journey.
But
People
they don't get a say in it though. They get to experience it. It's like when you watch a movie, do you get to tell the characters of the movie how to behave? Oh, I don't like that.
I mean,
you
if
did
you're
that.
watching The Bachelor,
That's not the problem.
Okay.
That's not the issue here.
Instead of just being joyous that, hey, okay, they're where they are now, you know, it's part of evolution, you know, it's part of growth. And do I have all the answers for it? No. All I can do is apologize and move forward. That's all I can do. And if people don't accept my apology,
that's what you're doing right now.
Right.
You're basically throwing anybody who's detransitioning under the bus.
How am I not throwing anybody under the bus? Why would you say that?
That's not even what we're doing.
I've never, I mean, we've had detransitioners on our show. People will do what they need to do. It's not my life. I've lived my life. I make my mistakes. Everyone's entitled to make theirs. I'm not telling anybody how to live.
But do you understand why people are frustrated when you go from one thing to the other? And now instead of throwing, you know, I mean, I don't even think it's hard to explain. I'm sorry, it's hard to explain.
Well, I'm sorry that you're being confused with our life, but you know, it is our life, and we don't throw anybody under the bus.
You've also made your life
public.
An open book.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that you get to. It doesn't mean that you get to change the chapters or to criticize it. You get to experience it, and you know, sometimes you watch a drawing when you go into an art gallery. You don't get to critique it. You get to admire it. You don't get to tell the artist, here, let me take that. I want to change this, or I don't like what you did.
You know how many people are watching The Bachelor on Mondays and they're like, all have their opinions about who should be with who and all this stuff. I mean, it's like everybody has an opinion,
right?
But it's the people that are experiencing it that are really living it. So, I mean, it's like, I don't understand why you would be so emotionally invested in what two random 50-year-olds do on a given, you know,
I'm trying to remember who he is. He used to call in. David.
I'm invested.
I don't know. I'm just wondering why you get so bothered and bent out by what we do with our lives and what we say.
Because like I said, you went from one thing to the other. You went from telling anybody who's trans that they're not legitimate because trans.
Right, and that was based out of anger.
And now you're going to the other side.
I'm not going. What other side am I going to right now?
Is this
I've already apologized. Yeah, Phil.
Phil.
I apologize for everything that I've done. I needed to sort myself out. I had a lot of self-hatred.
You don't need to apologize for anything, Mark.
Well, I think I do, because I've hurt a lot of people in my confusion. And that's why I've apologized. In my confusion, in entering the zone in my life where Lynna and I got divorced, I got very angry at her. And we've explained this in other,
we've done
other
videos
and explained
Mark's
the
done
whole,
videos by himself.
I've apologized. I can't do anymore.
Okay, can I say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Your story between Lynna and Mark is one of the most beautiful stories of love I've ever heard in my life. But that doesn't change what I'm saying.
Okay. So what do you suggest we should do to make reparations, I guess? I don't know what it is that.
Well, when I listened to your interview, I was kind of taken aback by how you just went you did a complete 180 on everything you claim to believe in. How do you not think that people aren't going to listen to that and think that there's something weird there?
Well, people change their mind.
What is
all
the
180
time. About? People about Christianity and belief?
Or whatever it is that we believed before and now we believe differently. People change. People have a change of heart as you evolve and you grow. I mean, from the time I was born to now, gosh, I've had so many changes, and it's part of life. What the problem would be if you stay stagnant and never change. But as you grow and you evolve, and that's part, I believe, that what we're here on this planet to do. I mean, I don't know.
So then why did you delete all your videos as Marita?
I didn't.
I didn't.
They're all up. They're all up. They're all on the YouTube channel, and people are linking to them and writing comments.
It's part of the story. I don't.
Yeah.
Why would I want to delete that? It's part of my story. It's history. You don't just erase history.
I guess I feel that's what's happening.
You feel that history is being erased?
Yeah, I mean, have you?
Phil, we love you.
I think no. I think that these are conversations that can have enormous importance.
Oh, definitely.
To people.
Sure.
Definitely. That's why we are listening to you and we are responding to you. A lot of salt in that food way too.
Yeah.
I'm thirsty.
I'm sorry. I do not want to make you angry.
We're not angry. We're not angry at you, Phil. We remembered who you are, Phil, right?
Yeah.
You used to call it when we lived in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Lena would always say something about how, oh, this person's drunk or this person's drinking alcohol. You know, I mean, that seems to be Lena's like go-to to disregard anything anyone has to say. But
I didn't say anything though, did I? Said nothing.
You did. Yes, you did, Lena. Come on.
Right now? I didn't say anything.
No,
Back then
not
she
right
did.
now.
Back then she did.
Back
But you
then,
did.
you were swigging a bit.
You're still
sounded
doing
it.
this to people. You're still doing that to that guy who did the podcast with you.
Mars
Mars-
actually
You
admitted.
made it seem like this guy's podcast wasn't relevant because he took shots on stream or something.
No, he's the one
No,
that said
he's the one that
Let me
admitted
finish.
it.
He's the one that admitted that he usually drinks and sometimes says things on Twitter when he's drunk. So we would just say, so is this coming out of you now because you're drinking? You know.
Yeah.
Okay, so don't you see the problem here? You're accusing somebody of doing something under the auspices of alcohol when you're doing the same thing constantly.
The same thing constantly.
I mean that you transition, that you detransition, that you transition.
Well, how's that?
You're doing the same thing
How does that
over and over again.
relate? How does that relate to somebody drinking and saying something out of drunk? I mean, my life and what I do as far as my gender identity and how I've had to deal with it because of shame or whatever else, childhood trauma, religiosity, my going back and forth had nothing to do with me, but with the shaming and the things that were presented to me in life. And I was trying to please my family. There was different things going on, things that I had not dealt with from the very beginning that I transitioned. What I did doing the detransitioning helped me heal because I went in to my vulnerability to be able to deal with certain things. Once this last detransition and we were set as a couple and I had already worked through a bunch of stuff, then I was able to return to who I am in full confidence without worrying about the traumas and the shaming and everything else that was haunting me from the very beginning. And I don't think that's anybody's business, even though I'm sharing it right now. What I do in my life, the business is if I was hurtful and harmful to a community, that I loved for many years and I advocated for. I am ashamed of what I did, and I've apologized. And I can't apologize. I don't know unless I could do it in another language, and I don't know how many other ways. But I've already apologized plenty. If people want to accept that apology, that is beautiful. If they don't, that's on them. I'm free from the things that I did because I have forgiven myself. And I don't think I have to continue to ponder on something.
Why are you still fighting with people who have been led into transgenderism?
I'm not fighting. On the contrary, I think if you listen to the podcast in the beginning, in the past couple of podcasts that we've tried to explain why I got upset at Mars and frustrated with what he was doing, is because he reminded of me of what I was doing before. Listen to the beginning of the podcast. We shared some information and some screen grabs that would show you why we were upset at Mars. He is gathering people to be hateful towards trans people. He is the one that is
trans, but he's a trans.
Yeah, that's what's blowing our mind. He's trans, and there's a lot of trans that have transphobia.
He's attracting a lot of gender critical people, a lot of radical feminists that are applauding his efforts.
No, I'm sorry. I reject this. He's a trans man asserting that transgenderism does not make you biologically female or male. That's all he's doing.
What?
As I've stated, looking at the people that comment on his threads, on his YouTube, a lot of them are rad femmes. A lot of them are very gender critical. I mean, there's a group of transgender people that literally now, as opposed to 5 years ago, where they wouldn't accept their biology, now they're accepting it. And we weren't on the opposite end of that last, 5 years ago, where we weren't accepting it. We were accepting our biological reality, quote unquote, but here it is like 180. It's really bizarre, really weird.
And Terry says, does this guy not understand?
No, it's not, I'm sorry, it's not bizarre.
It is bizarre.
Mark was the progenitor of this idea. And I think this idea is actually way more conducive than to trans people being accepted in the wider world.
If you think that, that's great, but we don't. We already think, for someone to say, I am a trans woman, but I am also a biological male. That's just very confusing for a society.
We want to run away from that. That's why we do what we do.
That's why we transition.
No, I'm sorry, Lynna. That what you just said is less confusing than the fact that, you have a girl dick. That's less confusing.
Well, I don't ever say that. And that's a personal issue.
Right.
Okay. Well,
whether someone has
that just means that you're not onto the, avant-garde of trans rhetoric.
Well, no, I mean, now you're speaking as, a gay guy who doesn't really.
I'm not a gay guy. I'm not a gay guy. I'm trans.
Oh, no, you're trans. Okay.
You weren't trans back.
Yeah, you weren't before.
So. Okay, so now you're trans.
Well, things change.
Oh, that's good.
Evolution.
Who knows?
That's right.
Well, if you accept your biology, then great. That's wonderful. But that's why we transition.
Listen to the beginning of this show, and we're trying to finish reading an article that was very interesting, where biology is actually not what people think, and there's a lot of new evidence and new things. We would like to continue. Actually, I don't think we'll be able to read 222. I don't want to keep people up. We've been going for 2 hours and 22 minutes, and we appreciate your call, Phil, even though every time you call is, always a challenging thing, and that's okay. That's fine. I'm not angry at you. I don't dislike you. I don't hate you. I appreciate you very much. And I'm sorry if my life has been confusing for you. My advice to you is to live yours. Usually when people get upset at other people's life, they're dealing with their own stuff. Because I know that was my fault. I used to do that because I couldn't point my finger at myself. So it was easy for me to point at others. And thankfully.
Yeah, Mark, and you're still doing that.
No, I'm
You're
not.
still pointing the finger at people who regret transitioning.
How am I doing that?
Because
When have I
they've
said anything of like that nature?
Transitioning people.
I've never said anything of that. On the
We're
contrary.
not, we're pro people that do that.
Everyone's
I don't
entitled
know.
to live their life. You're putting words in my mouth and
Yeah.
you're saying things that are not true. That I don't appreciate, and that
Yeah.
I will not allow you to do. So I think we're done here.
It's no different than we've been treated all throughout today.
It's okay. I don't care. Do you think any of these people that have look at how he starts?
I know.
I'm a loser.
I know.
So you're a loser and you want somebody else to feel like a loser. No, I'm sorry. You're the loser and you need to sort yourself out. And next time you call and want to talk to us
Okay.
with a little more
Okay,
respect.
thanks, Mark.
You're
thanks,
very
Mark.
welcome.
That's real compassionate of you.
Oh, now yeah.
Sarcasm
ain't going to get you anywhere.
You're talking in sarcasm right now. That's the whole reason people have problems with you people.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I guess people that have problems with us
So we're
will have
supposed
problems.
to like sit here and take the batter.
Yeah.
Take you insulting us and take you saying things. I've held my cool all along and try to be respectful and try to be loving and caring. But I'm not going to put up with any more abuse.
That's okay. He's again. I
don't
guess.
want to hang up on people like Mars did.
Yeah.
So are we done here? Phil? Okay, he hung up himself. That's good.
You know,
it's okay. It's okay. This is what, and notice how he started. I'm a loser. Every time he called in the past, there was always something negative. It was always battling. And why was he battling? Because he was.
I'm not here to psychoanalyze.
Well, but
Phil at all. I mean, I just don't appreciate the pointed jabs.
Oh, I know, but that's what people do. And like Terry said, we've been clear that some people will transition for the wrong reason. That's not the same as throwing them under the bus. But people.
Yeah, he does sound like he was hurting.
Yeah, he was.
He
was.
I mean, he called himself loser.
Yeah, and I try to be compassionate in the beginning, but then he kept throwing jabs and kept throwing jabs. I never, ever draw first blood. And I'm very patient and try to be, but when you continue to try, and everybody heard the whole conversation.
Well, sorry we couldn't finish up our article that was really insightful.
But here it is for you guys if you want to continue to read it. It's a really good article that proves a lot of things. What's really funny is like he's here hurling insult. And then after 20 minutes of hurling insult, and I can't take it anymore, and I turn it back, it's like, oh,
this is what you always do.
And it's like, but you come off as a, crazy attackive,
and like he starts off the phone call like, you don't need to know who I am.
Yeah, I know, very defensive. And then I'm like, I know that voice. I know that voice. And I was like, oh, Phil. And Phil was always very bipolar. And sometimes he loved us, sometimes he hated us.
But that's the thing, That's the thing. This is what happens on social media.
Yeah, well, because there's people, and like you said, they're invested. Well, maybe there shouldn't be so much investment. Maybe he needs to work, or she. I don't know. They said they're transgender. They were a gay man before, so now they're trans.
So they have to be a trans woman.
So they're a trans woman. Maybe she needs to work through her pain and stop taking it out on other people, because our paradigm don't fit her paradigm anymore. Anyway, guys, as always, real talk becomes very real. I think a lot of you are starting to see what it is and what people, perfect example right here. Perfect example,
I'm not quite, if anybody has some insight as to why people seem to be so invested in our lives, I just
social media is bipolar, and that's true.
They get so offended by what we do or don't do. You transition.
it's,
Not
you know,
really.
if I live my life worrying about what other people think,
No,
I'd be more crazy.
I'm not worried.
Yeah.
Did I say I'm worried?
No.
I said
Can
I would
somebody-
like to know if anybody has any insight as to why people have to think that they have to be so invested. I mean, we only spend a few hours online, and the rest of our lives we live in.
Well, that's how it goes. Some people do that, and that's great. And we've helped a lot of people, and we've hurt a lot of people as well. And for that, we've apologized. But those hurt people want to remain hurt, because they're hurting inside themselves, so they want to lash out to others, and we're the visible others that they can see. But I don't let people like that get under my skin. It's not worth it. I mean, I wish her well, and I wish she really gets herself together.
And she just expected us to know that they had transition.
I know. It's like we haven't talked to Phil since we lived in 702 Bueller Street over in New Mexico. That salty food. Very thirsty. Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's 2 hours and a half of great information, little live drama, never a dull moment on Real Talk with the Cummings.
It's all real.
It's all real, What did Terry says? They were looking for answers, but not from within. Exactly. And sometimes I think that's what happens is people are wanting to look for answers. Like the Rebecca, they invest, and then when we change, a way of thinking, they can't handle that. And
he didn't like the fact that you had become a Christian, I think.
And then when
he got upset,
and now he's saying that we're talking
he liked
down.
Maritza.
Yeah,
he liked Maritza, but he didn't like the fact that you'd become a Christian.
Yeah, and I don't know why, or she's coming along and saying that I'm talking down to detransitioners. Why would I do that? I detransitioned 5 times. It's beyond me.
It's like when people
lie, that's when I got upset.
Yeah, when people create
when
a
they
narrative
lie.
That's not true.
That's when I get upset. Don't you lie about me. You could say whatever, but when you start lying, that's when there's a problem. I will not put up with that. Love you too, dude. And Darcy, thank you so much. And thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Freedom Grower, for the call. It was really
very insightful
experience.
Thank
actually.
you. And Sable Chicken for the challenges. And what was her name? Marla, no?
Marcy,
and Janae. But what's the lady that called? Marlo
Grace.
Marla Grace, and Freedom Grower. And everybody else that's been watching and did not comment. And
Darcy said they hate themselves so much that they lash out at others.
Yep. Because they don't like you living your truth because they feel they can, and that is impossible for them. I think that's really where you hit the nail on the head, Darcy, and we make mistakes and we share those mistakes and are unapologetic for the mistakes. We apologize for the things that we say that are hurtful, but we're not apologetic for the detransition, the transition. It's my life. It's my body. I'm not putting her body in the whole commotion. And if I needed to do that 5 times to get myself centered, then I needed to do that. Who is anybody to say otherwise? To call me mentally deranged or whatever. My mental state is perfect. There's absolutely nothing wrong with my mental state. I'm a little OCD. I like things clean, Other than that, I'm not a screamer. I'm not violent.
No.
I don't drink. I don't smoke. I ate a lot of sugar today in the buffet, though. I usually try to eat healthy.
Yeah.
We work out at least 6 days a week. Pretty simple, plain people. We love going for walks, hiking, watch romantic movies. Like to watch The Bachelor. We've gotten into watching The L Word, the new episode. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That was good.
I like the music on The L Word.
It's pretty cool.
They want you to admit that you aren't who you say you are because they don't believe it themselves.
There you go. Great analogy there, Darcy.
A lot of good insight.
Good insight.
Darcy.
Good insight.
Oh.
But Phil, I don't know what they call themselves now because if they transition, they're not Phila. I don't know. I wish I could help you, but you got to help yourself. It starts from within, as we were speaking with Freedom Grower. People need to be willing to do the work. If they're not willing to do the work, nothing changes. All right, my wife is getting tired. It's
I was tired this morning when I woke up.
Oh, you wanted to keep going,
I did, because I want to do shows every day.
Yeah, because it's good.
Because it's good to talk and stuff, and it's good to give people a place to come to and stuff like that. So
you are good at reading people, Darcy. Real good. Anyway, guys, appreciate your time. Thank you for staying up so late with us. We love you. But remember to always love yourselves too. Have a good night. Happy Sunday. Thank you, Janae. And Janae says too many people in this community live their life online. Yeah, they do. They need to. Yep. That is so true. Be well, all. Take care and catch you possibly tomorrow.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.